All right, so was the Treaty of Versailles fair to Germany? I mean, that's a question that just keeps coming up again and again, doesn't it?
It really does.
And I think, anyone who's trying to understand like the 20th century and all the, the conflicts and everything that happened really has to grapple with this treaty that was signed after World War I. Because, some people see it as like this act of justice, this necessary thing that had to happen. And other people see it as this like huge blunder that set the stage for, more problems down the line.
Yeah, absolutely.
So today what we're going to do is we're going to kind of dive deep into these arguments surrounding, how fair or unfair this treaty really was.
Yeah, and I think what's really interesting is we've got a collection of historical perspectives and sources that we can use to really get to grips with this question.
Yeah, for sure.
And we're going to be drawing a lot from, some of the material that Russell Tarr has put together on activehistory.co.uk.
Yeah, active history is great.
Yeah, it's a fantastic website.
Yeah.
We highly recommend it. If you want to, kind of go even deeper into this and other historical periods,
Totally.
there's a ton of information there.
A wealth of knowledge.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're also going to be looking at some other stuff too to kind of give us a really well-rounded picture of the whole thing.
Yeah, I think, the point here isn't to give you a simple yes or no answer to the question of fairness.
Right.
It's much more complicated than that.
Totally.
It's more about you developing a nuanced understanding of, why this treaty was so controversial.
Right.
And why people are still talking about it, almost 100 years later.
Right.
So we're going to explore what motivated the, victorious powers. What did they actually want?
Yeah.
What did the treaty demand of Germany?
Yeah.
How did the Germans themselves react to it?
Yeah.
And then, how have historians kind of interpreted it all in the years since?
Right.
So it's a fascinating kind of, journey through history.
Okay, so let's get into it. So where do we even begin trying to figure out if this treaty was fair? I mean, like, where's the starting point?
I think a crucial first step is understanding the men who were largely, responsible for shaping this treaty in the first place.
Yeah.
And I think, we often talk about the big three at Versailles.
Yeah,
right?
big three, yeah.
So you've got Georges Clemenceau of France.
Right.
You've got David Lloyd George of Britain.
Yeah.
And you've got Woodrow Wilson of the United States.
Yep.
And what's so fascinating is how their different aims, their different priorities really influenced how the final document turned out.
Yeah, okay, so let's start with Clemenceau, right? So he's leading France, a nation that suffered so much in the war, millions of casualties, huge parts of the country were just devastated.
Absolutely, yeah.
I mean, you can kind of imagine that his main priority was making sure that Germany could never, ever do anything like that again.
I mean, for Clemenceau, the driving force was really the security of France.
Right.
And, as you read through the material, particularly on activehistory.co.uk,
right,
you'll see how his demands really reflect this, this deep-seated concern.
Okay.
He was pushing for the return of Alsace-Lorraine.
Right.
Which Germany taken from France back in the 1870s.
Right, yeah.
He wanted the demilitarization of the Rhineland.
Which is that, like, buffer zone between France and Germany.
Exactly, yeah, that crucial buffer zone. He wanted, French control of the Saar Basin's coal fields.
Right, to, like, cripple them economically.
Yeah, to really weaken Germany economically. Yeah. He wanted extensive reparations payments, to help France recover.
Okay.
And, of course, he wanted the War Guild Clause.
Right, to, like, really rub it in.
Yeah, to really make Germany accept responsibility.
Yeah.
And there's a great quote from Clemenceau where he says, Germany must no longer have a foot beyond the Rhine.
Right.
So you can really see how that aim of like lasting security for France really shaped many of the harshest terms in the treaty.
Okay, so that's a pretty clear picture of Clemenceau's mindset, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, Lloyd George, representing Britain, his position seems a little bit more complicated, I think.
Yeah, I think it was.
Public opinion in Britain definitely wanted Germany to pay.
Yeah, they wanted justice.
Right. But there was also this understanding that, like, a totally broken Germany wouldn't be good for Britain either.
No, exactly.
Especially in terms of, like, trade and the economy.
Yeah, I mean, Lloyd George was really walking this tightrope.
Right.
The British public, understandably wanted justice for what had happened.
Right.
But he also recognized that Germany was important as a future trading partner.
Right.
They didn't want to completely destroy them.
Yeah, okay.
And so his aims, as you'll see discussed on activehistory.co.uk,
right,
were a bit more nuanced.
Okay.
He wanted to limit Germany's naval power.
Yeah, because Britain was like the naval superpower at the time.
Exactly. Yeah, that was really important for the British Empire.
Right.
And he also wanted to secure some of Germany's former colonies,
Right.
which, again, were valuable to the British Empire.
Okay.
However, he was also worried that excessively punitive reparations would destabilize Germany.
Yeah. Make them, too angry, too desperate.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that could potentially lead to, more problems down the line.
Right. More conflict.
More conflict, yeah, exactly. And there's a famous quote from Lloyd George where he says, "We want a just but not a vindictive peace."
Interesting.
So you can see that he was trying to strike this balance.
Yeah.
And, what's interesting is he was also concerned that a peace that was seen as too unfair by the Germans could actually lead to future conflict.
Right. So he was kind of looking ahead and thinking, okay, how is this actually going to play out?
Exactly.
Yeah.
He was very aware of the potential consequences of like a really harsh peace.
Yeah. And as we know from history, that turned out to be a pretty good concern to have.
Yeah, very prescient concern.
Yeah. All right. So then we have Woodrow Wilson, the American president, coming in with his, idealistic 14 points.
Right.
It was a very different approach, I think, compared to like the more, hard-nosed aims of Clemenceau and even Lloyd George to some extent.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Wilson's vision was very much rooted in his 14 points.
Right.
And as you'll learn, from the activehistory.co.uk resources, he was aiming for a very different kind of world order.
Right.
He was championing, these principles like self-determination for different peoples.
Right.
Free trade.
Yeah.
Disarmament.
Right. So like getting rid of all these weapons.
Exactly. Yeah. Open diplomacy. So like no more secret treaties and alliances.
Yeah.
And the establishment of a League of Nations.
Right. The League of Nations was like this big idea he had.
Yeah. It was like this international body designed to prevent future wars through cooperation.
Yeah. Everyone working together, right?
Yeah. That was the idea.
Yeah.
And Wilson really believed that this league could also address any injustices or imperfections in the peace terms over time.
So even if it wasn't perfect right away, the League of Nations could like fix it later on.
Yeah, that was his thinking.
Okay.
So his focus was really on creating this, world fit and safe to live in based on, these very lofty ideals.
Yeah. Okay. So you have these three individuals, right?
Okay.
Each of them representing nations with vastly different experiences of the war.
Yeah. Totally different perspectives.
And, very different ideas about what the peace should look like. It just seems like it would have been almost impossible to come up with a treaty that everyone could agree on.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the inherent conflicts in their aims meant that the Treaty of Versailles was always going to be a compromise.
Right.
And as you might expect, it was a compromise that ultimately satisfied very few people.
Yeah, of course.
Clemenceau felt it wasn't harsh enough.
Of course he didn't.
To guarantee France's long-term security.
Right.
Lloyd George was worried about the economic consequences of like a really harsh treaty.
Yeah.
And Wilson saw many of his idealistic principles, kind of watered down or ignored completely.
Yeah, so no one was really happy.
No one was really happy.
Okay, so with all of these like clashing visions, in mind.
Yeah.
It's kind of amazing to think that they actually managed to like hammer out this treaty.
Yeah.
So what were some of the key things that Germany had to agree to? Like how did these compromises actually manifest in the treaty itself?
Yeah. So the treaty imposed significant losses on Germany in three key areas.
Okay.
So you had territory.
Right.
You had its economy.
Okay.
And you had its military.
All right, so let's start with the territorial losses.
Okay, yeah. So as activehistory.co.uk details,
right,
Germany was forced to return Alsace-Lorraine to France.
Right. So that's gone.
That's gone, yeah. The Saar Basin, which is rich in coal,
right,
was placed under the control of the League of Nations for 15 years.
Okay.
With France getting the coal output. So France is benefiting from that economically.
Yeah.
The Rhineland was demilitarized.
Okay.
And Allied forces were going to occupy it for anywhere between 5 and 15 years.
Wow. So like foreign troops on German soil.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
But perhaps the most contentious territorial change was the creation of what's called the Polish Corridor.
The Polish Corridor, right.
Yeah. And this was a strip of land that was carved out to give newly independent Poland access to the Baltic Sea.
Right. Because Poland didn't exist before the war. Right.
Exactly. Yeah. Poland was recreated after the war.
Right.
And so they needed access to the sea, and this Polish corridor effectively cut Germany in two.
Oh,
So we
wow.
created this like geographical wound.
Yeah, I mean, that's got to be humiliating.
Yeah, it was a source of constant nationalist anger in Germany.
Right.
And then on top of all that, Germany also lost all of its overseas colonies.
So it's like their empire's completely gone. Completely gone. Yeah. Um, and these were then administered as League of Nations mandates.
Right.
So, kind of controlled by the League of Nations.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, just from those territorial changes alone,
Yeah,
you can see why Germany felt like it was really being punished.
absolutely. Yeah, they felt significantly diminished.
Right.
And then you add on top of that the economic impact.
Right, because it wasn't just about land, right? It was about money, too.
Yeah, the economic provisions of the treaty were designed to be very punitive.
Okay.
And so Germany was saddled with these massive reparations payments.
Right, these reparations.
Yeah.
Like,
And they were initially set at 132 billion gold marks.
I mean, that's just an astronomical sum.
Yeah, it's an enormous sum. And many economists at the time, like John Maynard Keynes,
Right.
argued that it was simply unsustainable.
Like Germany could never pay that back.
Exactly. Yeah. And that it would cripple the German economy for generations to come.
Right. And this financial burden, I mean, it really hampered Germany's ability to recover after the war.
Yeah, it's like they're starting off already in a huge hole.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, and then the military restrictions, I mean, those are pretty extreme too, weren't they?
Yeah, the treaty imposed really drastic limitations on Germany's armed forces.
Okay.
So the army was limited to just 100,000 men.
100,000 men, that's tiny.
Yeah. For a country the size of Germany, it's tiny.
Right.
Conscription was forbidden, so they couldn't have a draft.
Okay.
And Germany was prohibited from possessing, tanks, aircraft, heavy artillery submarines.
So basically like all the modern weapons.
Yeah, all the modern weapons that had been used in World War I.
Right.
Their navy was reduced to just a handful of small warships.
So they're basically defenseless.
Yeah, I mean, they felt incredibly vulnerable.
Right.
And this was another major source of resentment.
Yeah. I mean, they've lost their land, they've lost their money, and now they've lost their ability to even defend themselves.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. And then, of course, there's the war guilt clause.
Right. Article 231.
Yeah. Article 231. I mean, forcing Germany to accept full responsibility for causing the war. That must have been like a huge humiliation for them.
Yeah, it was. Article 231 was a deep wound to German national pride.
Right.
And, Germans felt that the responsibility for the war was far more complex than that.
Right. It wasn't just them that caused the war.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, they felt like the blame should be shared among several European powers.
Yeah.
And so being forced to accept sole blame
Yeah.
was seen as a blatant injustice.
Right.
And it really fueled immense resentment.
Yeah. Towards the treaty and towards the Allies.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And then finally, despite President Wilson's push for the League of Nations,
Right.
Germany was initially excluded from membership.
So they can't even join this new, peace organization.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. So that's another slap in the face.
Yeah, it further isolated them on the international stage.
Right.
And so you can see why, from Germany's perspective, this treaty was seen as deeply unfair.
Yeah. Absolutely.
They had these terms dictated to them
Right.
without any real negotiation.
Right.
And it felt more like a punishment
Yeah.
designed to cripple them than, a foundation for lasting peace.
Right. Like this is just revenge.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. But you can also see why the Allies, especially France, felt justified in imposing these terms.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, after all the suffering they went through,
Yeah.
it's really hard to, judge this situation with the benefit of hindsight.
It is. It's very complex.
Yeah.
But, from the Ally perspective, particularly France,
Right.
the desire for security and for Germany to pay for the damage it had caused
Yeah.
was entirely understandable.
Yeah, for sure.
The scale of devastation in France was immense.
Yeah.
Millions of casualties, widespread destruction.
Right.
And, the war guilt clause, while inflammatory, was used as the legal justification for reparations.
Right. So they're saying, okay, you caused the war, therefore you have to pay for it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's also worth remembering that in 1918, Germany had imposed a very harsh treaty on Soviet Russia at Brest-Litovsk.
Right.
So, this idea of victor nations imposing severe terms
Yeah.
was not unique to Versailles.
Right. It's kind of how things worked back then.
Yeah, exactly. And then, of course, the creation of the League of Nations,
Right.
despite its eventual weaknesses,
Yeah.
was intended as a mechanism to prevent future conflicts.
Right.
So there was a genuine desire, I think, for lasting peace.
Yeah.
even if the methods were, deeply flawed.
Okay, so what was the immediate impact of the Treaty of Versailles on Germany in the years right after it was signed? Let's say like up to the hyperinflation crisis of 1923.
Yeah, so it was a period of profound instability and hardship in Germany.
Yeah, I mean, it must have been a lot of upheaval.
It was.
Okay,
Um, so socially, the treaty fueled enormous resentment.
of course.
There was a surge in nationalism,
Right.
and the widespread acceptance of what's called the stab in the back myth.
The stab in the back myth. Yep.
Yeah, and this was the idea that, Germany hadn't really lost the war on the battlefield,
Right.
but that they'd been betrayed by, politicians and, other people back home.
Right, like the Jews or the communists or whoever.
Yeah, exactly. And this myth was used to, you know, blame the new democratic government.
Right, the Weimar Republic.
Yeah, the Weimar Republic for Germany's defeat and for the treaty's harsh terms.
Right, so they're already, delegitimizing this new government.
Exactly, yeah. And then economically, the loss of key industrial territories,
Right.
combined with the, crushing burden of reparations,
Yeah.
severely weakened Germany's industrial capacity.
Right, they can't produce as much.
Yeah, and this ultimately led to the catastrophic hyperinflation of 1923.
Right, hyperinflation.
Yeah.
Which is where, the value of the currency just collapses.
Yeah, basically money becomes worthless.
Right.
And this devastated the savings of ordinary Germans.
Yeah, people lost everything.
Yeah, created immense economic hardship.
Right.
And then to make matters worse, France and Belgium occupied the Ruhr industrial region in 1923.
Oh, wow. So they're like sending in troops again.
Yeah, because Germany was struggling to meet its reparation payments.
Right. So they're like, we're just going to take your factories then.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
And then politically, the treaty really undermined the legitimacy of the Weimar Republic.
Yeah, that fragile new democracy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And, extremist political movements.
Right.
Both on the left and the right.
Right. So communists and fascists.
Yeah. They gained traction by exploiting public anger and disillusionment with the treaty.
Right.
And, there were even violent uprisings.
Oh, wow.
Aimed at overthrowing the government.
Okay.
Fueled by this deep resentment.
So it's like this treaty almost like backfired in a way.
Yeah. I mean, you could see how the treaty created this perfect storm
Right.
for instability in Germany.
Yeah. It's almost like they sowed the seeds of future conflict by trying to prevent it.
Yeah, I think that's a very astute observation.
Okay, so it's no wonder that historians, still debate the fairness of this treaty and its long-term consequences.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, the legacy of the Treaty of Versailles is still debated, fiercely by historians.
All right.
As we mentioned earlier, John Maynard Keynes was a very early critic.
Right.
He argued that the treaty's economic provisions were fundamentally flawed.
Yeah.
And would lead to disaster.
Yeah. And he was right.
And he was right.
Yeah.
Other historians have emphasized, the immense pressures that the Allied leaders were under.
Right.
And their genuine desire, however misguided,
Yeah.
to prevent future wars.
Yeah. I mean, they were trying to do the right thing.
Yeah, they were. It's also been pointed out that even figures like Clemenceau,
Right.
who was seen as very harsh,
Yeah.
weren't necessarily aiming for the complete destruction of Germany. They understood that Germany needed to be a part of Europe,
Right.
but they wanted to weaken it
Mm-hmm.
to the point where it was no longer a threat.
Right.
And so the challenge, as you can see, was finding a balance between punishing Germany for its role in the war
Yeah.
and creating a stable and sustainable peace in Europe.
Right.
And it's a balancing act that they ultimately failed to achieve to the satisfaction of most.
Yeah. I mean, it really makes you think, considering the motivations of the victors, the terms they imposed, and the, devastating impact this had on Germany, was a truly fair treaty even possible in the aftermath of such a brutal conflict?
Yeah, that's the question, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, given the immense suffering on all sides,
Mm-hmm.
the deeply entrenched national interests,
Right.
the volatile political climate,
Yeah.
I mean, what might a fairer alternative have looked like?
Yeah.
And what might the consequences of that alternative have been?
Right. It's like a what-if scenario.
Yeah, it's a huge what if.
Yeah.
But, I think the Treaty of Versailles remains this really powerful case study
Yeah.
in the complexities and challenges of peacemaking.
Yeah. It's a great example of how hard it is to make peace after a war.
Exactly.
All right. Well, this has been a really insightful deep dive, I think, into this pivotal moment in history.
It has, yeah.
And, if you want to learn more about the Treaty of Versailles and its impact, and highly encourage you to do so,
Yeah.
be sure to visit activehistory.co.uk.
Yeah.
The resources there, especially the ones provided by Russell Tarr, are just invaluable for understanding this complex period.
Yeah. And I think, understanding the Treaty of Versailles isn't just about looking back.
Right.
It's about understanding how decisions made in the aftermath of conflict
Right.
can have profound and long-lasting consequences.
Right, and that's something we should all be thinking about.
Absolutely. I mean, it highlights this, delicate balance
Yeah.
between justice, retribution, and the imperative for building a stable future.
Yeah, for sure. All right, well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive,
Yeah, thanks for having me.
and we'll catch you next time.
See you then.